it's man's responsibility to regenerate the inner foundation. That's what that means. It falls to us that's what man does in relationship to Ieyo. A man can choose his elevator. He can choose the spot where he wants to go in creation. How high do you want to go? How low do you want to go? Where is the right place, to set your horizons, to set your going forth, to set your ideal, because that's what's coming up next. Number 6 is the ideal. And so we can look at man in relationship to these previous cycles, these previous conditions, these previous stations that man goes through, humanity, that the universe goes through, that reality goes through, and what does it mean in relationship to man. So we can continue doing this. I mean, we can look at number 6, which is the Hoi, which is the circle and the true cross, but then and representing the ideal, the perfect, if we can consider that. But in reality, it often means to create and the Uz, as it says in Oahspe, because man makes mistakes, and so he's not all perfect, and his conception of the all ideal isn't perfect either. And so all our perception of all perfect is not going to be perfect, meaning that our Hoi is not going to be perfect. It's going to be well, depending upon where we are in grade, it will fall somewhere short of that. And we have to, or it can go beyond it, as we mentioned in our previous video as well, that too much of a good thing can be poison as well. So man in relationship to Hoi, he is the 7th cycle of that. Because it goes Hoi, Dru, Eoi, Eloi, Susa, Truk, Gan. That's 7. We're the 7th one. Now, what does the 7 mean? Recall that 7, the Dru, means the extremes. It's the drift to the extremes, and you can't go, if you go any further that way, then you start seeing the true cross again, and it's, so you've changed into a different realm, so to speak. So that's the extremes. But it's also, recall that this is the fullness, because you start with the ideal and you drift toward the extremes, toward fullness, and because we're not all perfect, we fall away and we lose things. Things dissipate and all that, and there's a collapse. That's what 7 is, limitations. And it's also very much, then we could say, responsibility. We have, in our relationship to the ideal, is that we ourselves are the limitation of the fullness, or well, we should say the fullness of the ideal is in our own keeping. We determine the limits for our, as far as interior, our own inner self here. We can develop to our heart's content for however long that we want to develop, and we keep moving toward Jehovah, toward the Creator, toward all oneness. But it not only means limitations and all, but recall what we discussed when you have the collapse and everything, you gain an understanding. You understand, oh yeah, boy, I sure fell short of the ideal there, and what do we have to do and all that, and then things become, you start to see things more objectively, more clearly. You start to see the lacks, essentially, and all that. What did you lack? Why? And so that all has to be, and that's all from this condition of Dru. And so a man in relationship then to the Hoi, to the ideal, is he acts as the fullness of it. The fullness of that ideal is in his own keeping. And the understanding of that ideal is in his own keeping. And it depends upon how clean he is, how pure he is, how clear he is, how wholesome he is, and by he I mean he or she. You know, the good works that a person does, all these things. So that's in man's keeping. Everyone, every human, every mankind being that there is has that capacity within them to do that, and has indeed the responsibility for that. A person could continue going that way and looking at man in relationship to everything previous to what he is. But it's also possible that we go forth, not only possible, but we must go forth. We must go forward. And so that means moving on to number 13 and 14 and 15. And what do those stations represent? What do those conditions mean? What is the meaning of those cycles? And as we were saying, you can apply these cycles to anything, and you can predict using these cycles of where a person is in relationship to reality, creation. But there's more to it, of course, than that, because there are cycles within cycles, as we previously mentioned. And so that's all we're going to talk about today. Have a good day.